Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Men for the Win is sponsored by the Grand Group with Edina Realty. Are you looking to purchase a new home in the Twin Cities area? Or perhaps you're trying to sell your current home? Whether you're upsizing or downsizing, the Grand Group with Edina Realty will meet all of your housing needs. Contact the Grand Group by emailing thegran, G-R-A-N, group at edinarealty.com or call them by phone at 612-817-8751. The Grand Group with Edina Realty, 3-time Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine Super Agent Award winners. On this episode, David and Hoges recap the Twins' 3-game series against the Cleveland Guardians. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win. My name is David Kufis. With me today, Andrew Hoges, Hoganson. Dan Thompson just had a rough week. School started. He has to actually go back to work. Can't just sit out plowing his fields and drinking beers. He actually had to talk to kids and get work accomplished, Hoges.
That's crazy. Yeah, I still don't know if I would actually like the life of a teacher, because while those 3 months off sound great, the first month back has got to be just brutal. Like, my wife's a teacher too, and she's always just exhausted the first month when she finally gets back there.
Yeah, it's got to be rough. I don't know what's worse though, Hoges, going back to work after a 3-month hiatus or watching this 3-game series the Twins just put together.
Oh man, it's just miserable. For me, it was an absolutely miserable weekend of sports in general. For those of you who don't know, I actually went to UW-Madison, and Dan apparently went to Washington State. Well, Washington State upset the Badgers 17-14 on Saturday night. The Twins get swept, and I'm a Packer fan, so today kind of just sucked also. So really, really rough weekend for sports. Why do we like sports, David? You sent me the text during the Yankees series that you just said, I hate baseball. I think I hate sports right now. I think I'm done for a while.
I didn't mind it today. There was an F1 race, and I'm a Viking fan, obviously, and so it wasn't a terrible day outside of the Twins' loss, but the Twins have done their job, though. They've kept it interesting until the NFL season started, so that's good at least.
I'd rather be caring about baseball now than caring about football already. I'm not supposed to care about football until November, because unlike the Vikings, the Packers actually expect to make the playoffs every single year, so nothing really matters until you start getting into January and December and those months. But I guess for you Vikings fans, you got to take what you can get when you can get it.
That is the truth, Hoges. So Twins now sit 4.5 back at Cleveland, and actually have been leapfrogged by the White Sox, who now are only 2.5 back of Cleveland. It was a rough one. Well, let's go ahead and talk about these games as much as we don't want to. Let's jump into the series recap.
Series recap.
So game 1, Hoges, Twins lose this one, heartbreaking fashion, 7-6. And I don't know, the MLB voted on these new rule changes, and I think the Twins interpreted that to mean that they couldn't score until a certain point in the game, because that's how all of the games went in this series.
Yeah, the Guardians get up in this game 7-0 before the Twins even get on the board, and it's just such a auspicious start to the most important series of the entire year. You're like, well, let's get going here, and then they just fall flat on their face. And I gotta admit, I wasn't even feeling great about this series at the beginning. When you look and we have Bundy pitching, Archer pitching, who apparently I am the world's biggest Chris Archer apologist now in the world, because of my whole comment started with me just mocking you for ripping Dan for explaining to you what ERA meant, and then all of a sudden that turns into, I think Chris Archer should be a Cy Young pitcher. And I love it, because every time, I've known you so long, David, it is so easy to get you going. Those text messages are great. So yeah, if you're questioning, was it a bit of a bit to just get you going? Absolutely it was. But at the same time too, I would like to defend myself a little bit. His ERA has gone up 0.4. So ERA, David, is earned run average. So it's about how many runs they're going to give up in a 9-inning game. And 4.35 isn't actually that bad. Granted, the man can't pitch past the second inning anymore, but he's acceptable. And it's not like we have Garrett Cole sitting around that could be pitching for our 5th starter if we had him. So David, you got to just take what you can get at this point in time.
No, we've rehashed this so many times. I'm not even going to dignify that with a response. You can go read Gleeman's article. You can listen to the last 5 episodes, basically, because it feels like every single episode I'm having the same conversation explaining what ERA means, and then explaining how that's not the only thing you need to take into account, which is exactly what Gleeman's article does.
I feel like this was successful. No, David, we don't want to talk about the games. I don't want it. You can't make me do it.
We do need to mention in game 1 at least, though, Bundy, honestly, this loss is not squarely on the shoulders of Dylan Bundy, but my goodness, 4.2 innings pitched, 12 hits, 7 runs, all of them earned, 3 home runs given up. Yeah, the offense made it interesting at the end of the game, but yeah, this one was really over before it began.
Even though they did kind of come back, I mean, they ended up losing 7-6, and they came back, and it was 7-6 in the 8th inning. Correa did basically all he could to keep the Twins in this game. I don't know about you, but I still didn't ever feel like the Twins were really going to come back.
When it was 7-6 in the 9th, it kind of felt like there was obviously a chance, and nothing. The only other thing we have to mention about this game, though, Karinchak getting his hair checked. So he's a relief pitcher for the Guardians, and he has sort of this tick where he'll run his hands through his hair before he pitches, and Rocco wasn't a fan of this, apparently, and so he asked the umps to go check the guy's hair. And it's, okay, I guess if I were the ump in that situation, Hogs, like I go up, and I kind of just rub my fingers on his hair, right? This looked like Karinchak had paid the ump $60 for a cut and shampoo. That ump got in there, man. He had both hands going on. Karinchak, he really looked like he was enjoying it. It was a little bit too sport clippy for me.
Yeah, you got to give him credit for doing his job. He definitely went up there and gave it all he had. But they interviewed Correa after the game, and Correa basically said, I mean, he was cheating. They just didn't find it on him, which, I mean, coming from Correa is always a little bit ironic based on past events, but
he's just working on his own championship culture.
Right. I don't know. The whole substance debate in baseball, I think, is just ridiculous because half the batters are like, I just don't want to get hit in the head, so let them use whatever they want. And if you ask me, I think Karinchak was cheating. Like, I truly do. You don't touch your hair that many times. I just don't know. A lot of that stuff, it has to be combined with sweat and rosin, and then you get it going and kind of activated, and that's what's helping him. But I don't know. I think this all gets overblown. It puts Rocco in a bad spot, too, because you're watching it, and you're like, well, all of our guys are getting ticked off because this guy's clearly going to his hair all the time. So what are you supposed to do as a manager? But then it makes you look petty afterwards, too. It's just, I think it's all stupid.
All right, well, let's go to game 2. Cleveland wins this one 6-4. It just feels like they had the lead the entirety of the game. The Twins happened to score 4 runs in the 9th. But again, it just all ends with a Minnesota loss.
They're getting these runs right in the first inning. They had 2-run homer right in the first game, too, also. And when it puts you behind the 8 ball so quickly, it takes the life out of your sails, and it's rough. Archer only makes it 2 innings pitched. He gives up 2 earned runs. He left with pec tightness. He just got put on the IL today. And the only thing I'm thinking in this whole series is, okay, if the Twins get swept, at least maybe Archer will throw like a 9-inning perfect game, and I can like have my moment with David. And then it just gets even. He goes 2 innings and gets hurt.
But don't worry, his ERA is 4.56. So if you average it out, Hogs, over 9 innings, just if you're unaware how earned runs work.
It might take 4.5 games for him to get those 9 innings, though.
Absolutely ridiculous. Again, top of the order here, though, is doing work. So Arise goes 3 for 5, Correa goes 3 for 5, Miranda goes 1 for 4, Gordon goes 2 for 4. And it's one of those things where you have that offensive production, but you go 4 for 11 with runners in scoring position. That's not even that bad as far as runners in scoring position go. However, there were so many other opportunities, like They seem to get hits with runners in scoring position in the least opportune time that they had runners in scoring position. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was a theme for this whole series, though, because when I was looking at, I mean, we'll get to this eventually, but when I was looking at Beast versus Bench, the top of the order did remarkably well in this series. The bottom of the order did nothing, and I'm going to give you credit here, but you made a comment that with all of these backups and reserve guys that they have in the outfield, they need one to produce every series, and they didn't get that in these series, and it hurt. I mean, you get a couple more hits in those situations. These are 2 different ball games.
Yeah, well, it's just funny, too, when you're looking at the runners in scoring position. Cleveland goes 1 for 7, and they still managed to win this game.
Yeah, it's insane. That's kind of been a theme this whole year. The Twins haven't been capitalized. I mean, 4 for 11 is good, so we shouldn't really be ripping them for that. But it could have been better. They had a lot more opportunities that just kind of fell flat. And how many times have we had runners on first and third with no outs and score 0 runs? Like, it just every time I see it. I mean, it happened getting to game 3 too. It happened again today. They had runners in first and third with no outs in the 7th inning and no runs. It's just infuriating because you almost see that, and I just put down my phone. I'm like, yeah, no, well, they're not going to score here.
The only other note I had on game 2 was that Kepler, he goes 0 for 5 in this game, but honestly, if you had even just average fielding plays, he goes 3 for 5 in this game with a couple of RBIs probably.
Yeah, I mean, that guy can't catch a break, literally, I guess, until today.
There's a look on his face that what's funny, because if you can contrast this, the home run robbery in the 8th inning, Kepler had already been robbed of a couple of hits, and then he has a home run robbed from him. And he's standing between first and second just with this look of, what can I possibly do? Like, what else can I do? And then I contrast that with after Kepler had hit his 5th straight home run off of Bauer when he was with the Indians.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It's like the same sort of looks of like, I don't understand.
Yeah,
How is this even possible?
This just works for me. Oh, man.
All right, well, let's get into game 3 here. This one was a little bit different and yet the same. So the Guardians win this one 4-1 over the Twins, obviously. Josh Winder makes a start, very Chris Archer-esque, going 4 innings pitched and 2 earned runs. So again, Hoges is also putting Winder on the Cy Young
Wouldn't
ballot.
you take that, though? Like, if I told you at the beginning of the game, Josh Winder's going to go 4 inning pitch and give up 2 earned runs, you'd be like, done. Sign me up.
If I had told you, yeah, I probably would take that, Hoges. But again, it's all within the context of the Archer discussion, so I just had to rip you a bit.
Oh, yeah. At least in this game, the Guardians didn't score in the first inning. I mean, we're going to find some silver lining there.
What made this game the most heartbreaking is so the Twins use virtually every pitcher they have. They have Winder, Thielbar, Jax, Fulmer, Duran, and then Lopez. And Lopez just looks like garbage. He gives up 3 hits, 2 earned runs, 2 walks, and he just looks ridiculous. It just looks so bad on that mound.
Yeah, I think I was going to be a little bit more upset with that if the Twins mounted any sort of rally. But again, the offense did nothing in this game. So you're only scoring 1 run. It's hard to really point fingers at that. It has been interesting to see Lopez struggle a little bit. I mean, it started with that White Sox series when we almost had the walk-off hit by pitch, and then they still came through. He just hasn't been what he was early in the year. I have no regrets about that trade at all. He's been very serviceable with us still, but it's frustrating to see him struggle in these last couple of games. It just, yeah, I hope he can get it turned around.
Well, isn't that the most frustrating part is that how excited were we after the trade deadline? That the Twins made all the moves that we wanted them to make, and it just sucks that every one that they've made just hasn't panned out well due to injury or struggles.
Yeah, this team on paper looks so good. This looks like we should be looking at a playoff team. And even if you would have asked me after the Yankees series who I thought was going to win the Central, I would have said the Twins. And I mean, we're being a little down in the dumps here, but they still have a shot. They have 3 games against the Royals coming up and then 5 against the Guardians. That's a lot of games. And granted, it is on the road, but anything can happen. This team isn't out of it yet. And it's one thing that I've talked about a lot when I've been on the podcast this year is every single time that you think this team is done, where they have just this debilitating loss, they've bounced back. I mean, look at the last time I was on with Dan when we talked about the Giants series where that sweep came out of the blue and then they went on that 5-game winning streak with that good series against the Red Sox. This team isn't done yet. It just looks real bleak right now, though.
We call that the Jake Cave syndrome, actually, where you perform really well right before you're about to get sent down.
So what you're saying is every single one on the Twins needs to wake up tomorrow morning, look in the mirror, and be like, you are a Minnesota Twin. You have to perform today.
Yes. So as Hogs mentioned on the schedule, the Twins have 3 against the Royals, and then they'll have that 5-game stint against Cleveland. Cleveland, in the meantime, will have 3 against the Angels, who right now, Hogs, are the Angels a postseason team? No, but I think they could definitely take 1 or 2 off the Guardians.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, they're 4.5 back now, but hopefully the Twins have success against the Royals, a team that they very easily can, and the Angels can give the Guardians a run for their money. It's still just crazy to me. I think the Guardians have lost something like 7 of their last 11, and now they have a 4.5 game lead on us. Like, it's just no one wants to win the Central. And I don't know about you, David, but I still don't feel like the White Sox are even a contender. Like, I get that we're in 3rd right now, but it feels like we're in 2nd. It feels like that team doesn't even exist, which is sad.
Well, what's weird about this is that, well, not weird, just I guess I'm just always wrong. That tends to be the sort of the picture here. But like I had said, a few weeks back when we were recording, I had said that I was actually more nervous about the White Sox putting it together than the Guardians. And I feel like neither of the team have, and yet they're still both ahead of us. So I don't know what to tell you.
That is what is so royally frustrating about this year, is that we're losing it ourselves. Like all it takes is mediocre play. Not even mediocre, like a little less than mediocre play, and they would be winning this division. And you were talking with Dan, well, they're not going to do anything in the playoffs. That's not true. Anyone who makes it into the playoffs, you get hot, you can go far in baseball. Baseball's stupid, where teams that do super well in the regular season, that doesn't necessarily guarantee success in the postseason. I mean, look at the 2019 Twins. And then you look at the Braves from last year. They had a horrible regular season and got hot at the right time, and they won. So all you got to do is get there. But man, it's it's going to take a little bit of a miracle to even get there.
Well, maybe magically, speaking of miracles, the Twins will have a whole bunch of reinforcements show up in time for that Cleveland series. Maybe Buxton gets healthy and Malley gets healthy and Polanco gets healthy. It could happen, Hoges.
I think it might need to happen if we want to have a shot at this. But it's so sad. Look, you guys make this joke all the time, too. If you look at our injured list, you would have a pretty good baseball team right there if all those guys were healthy. And you wonder, like, if that's just bad luck, if it's the way they've been managed or what. But they currently are second in baseball with the most players that are currently on the IL.
Just too many. Well, with that, Hoges, let's go ahead and jump into our segments.
Catch 'em all, Kirby Puckett!
Puckett's Picks winner.
Well, you've done well, Hoges. You have done well. You are keeping the listeners in contention. So Hoges took Correa for the listeners. He scored 12 points. Honestly, he's doing everything he can to put this team on his back and just say, I build championship cultures. You will come with me on this journey.
This really was the only bright spot of my entire weekend, was winning this one for the listeners. So yeah, Correa was on fire. He went 4 for 5 in game 1, 3 for 5 in game 2. He didn't have a great game today, but man, that guy's doing everything that he can. He's finally performing in these clutch moments too, where things are happening with him. So and his defensive play is still just outstanding. I still think he comes back. I'm still ordering my Correa jersey, and I probably should order an Archer jersey too, with the way you guys say I talk about him. But yeah, he had a great series again, and it's just disappointing that there was nothing to show for it.
I want to see the expression on the guy's face who has to fulfill that order. Like he sees the jersey orders coming.
Does this guy know?
This guy can't. This can't be right. I got to call him and check the order here. Anyway,
do you think he's coming back next year? Like, do you honestly think he isn't? But
no.
Where's he going to go?
Anywhere.
A lot of these teams have shortstops now that would pay him
sure.
a lot. I mean, I know anyone is looking for him, but I think there's a solid chance that he comes back to the Twins.
Fair
the
enough.
Yankees got Kiner Falefa. They don't want Correa.
Okay, so I took Miranda, who had 6 points. Dan took Gordon, who had 7 points. So season standings now, this has become a much closer race. I'm still in the lead with 16. Dan has 15, and now the listeners are at 13 for the season. Now, I'll give the season point totals just for Dan. Dan has 228 points. I have 195 points, and the listeners, hot on my heels now, have 191 points.
Correa pick, man, that Correa pick. It's kind of funny. We're a bit like the AL Central right now. No one really wants to take control of this thing and win it. We're all just going to stumble to the finish line and see what happens.
Let's keep going here. Beast versus Bench.
Beast versus Bench.
Is losing fun? Is losing fun?
Well, I'll let you take your moment in the sun, Hoges, and give us your Beast.
Pulling the old David move, I'm going to pick my guy who won Puckett's picks for me. It's got to be Correa. I actually think there's a lot of decent options because of how well the top of the order performed. But yeah, Correa was the easy pick for me in this one.
Yeah, truly, I think he is the right one. But for a little bit of parity, I'm going to go with Arise. Arise also had a very good series, but again, it's sort of overshadowed by 3 losses. But I think Correa is probably the true beast here.
Yeah, sometimes you have to scrape so much to find the beast in series like this, and it really was. I mean, there was some good options this series, which is just frustrating. I think you guys have talked about this before. Like, when are we going to get a stretch where the team is pitching well and hitting well and playing defensively, like, and then good base running too? I mean, it just hasn't happened yet, which maybe it's why we have so much false hope this year. But man, if they could just string those 3 things together, not going to take that much to win this division.
Who do you have on your bench?
I went with Sanchez. I feel bad because I keep picking on him, but it's so frustrating because at the start of this year, I truly thought that he was going to kind of rediscover his rookie and second season in New York when he's getting out of that limelight. But he went 1 for 9 with 6 strikeouts. His only hit was an infield single that basically it was just third base when he drilled it into third base and it bounced up. If that wouldn't have happened, he would have been out. But he's had so many opportunities, way more opportunities than he even should have had to just show that he can fill this everyday catcher role, and he's not doing it. And it's so frustrating. You're not expecting much out of him, but the production just has not been there this year. And with Jeffers being out, it was his position to lose. And half the time we wish Sandy Leon was out there.
That's really the frustrating part, right? That the guy who the team that we're chasing in the AL Central gave us at the trade deadline, we'd rather have him on the field than the guy who was a big trade acquisition in the offseason.
Yeah, it just hasn't turned out the way that I would have hoped with him. And I mean, I went back and listened to that seasoning opening podcast. You picked him to finish first for the Twins with home runs, and it hasn't happened this year. It was a better pick than Miguel Sano, I should say, but
at least there's that. Well, I'm going to give it to Bundy. I would have given it to Archer just because you're on the podcast and it would have been funny. But because he's injured, I don't want to do that. But I think Bundy is definitely deserving here of the old bench moniker. 7 earned runs, 7 earned runs. You can't do that in a game that's truly the biggest of the season.
I want to rip you again because I hate when you guys pick pitchers because I just don't think it's fair to them. But 12 hits, 7 earned runs, and 3 homers and only 1 strikeout, that's not good enough. That's fair. Dylan Bundy's ERA, incidentally, is actually higher than Archer's right now at 4.68. So, I mean, now we got to start comparing Archer to 4th starters on teams list. It's probably going to get even prettier.
Wonderful. Well, let's keep going here. Rocco's Rewind.
Rocco's Rewind.
Hogs, I think that if Varland doesn't get to make another start during this series against the Royals, I'm going to walk down to Target Field and I'm going to hold up signs. And now, granted, Rocco isn't the one making the decisions for who goes up and who goes down. However, you're telling me they wouldn't listen to him? And why wouldn't you let Varland come up and make another start at this point?
He has to. With how well he did against, I mean, a powerhouse lineup in New York, too. You want to see him again. And honestly, who else? Like, we got Winder starting, Archer's on the IL. Like, I agree with you for sure. He has to make another start. I mean, he looked so confident. And I think he could have even gone deeper into that game. But, man, yeah, he looks so good so far.
It's one of those things, too, where the biggest reason why I say that is because he'll be coming up on his 5 days rest. And now, granted, we want Joe Ryan and we want Sonny Gray to pitch, but I want Varland making that 3rd spot. All right, well, what do you have for Rocco, Hogs?
These series are so interesting for Rocco because you get to it like the game today with guys on 1st and 3rd, and at the end of that game you have Palacios batting, and I'm thinking when I'm watching that is why is this guy hitting in this situation? And you're just screaming at Rocco internally, and then you start looking at it, and really the only other option he had was the Hamiltons, and that would be worse. So I have so many things that I want to get mad at Rocco for, but then you start looking into it, and it's like, but what else? Like, I don't want him to keep pitching Pagan in these moments, but who else? Like, so much of that stuff is just so frustrating, and I think it leads me to believe, I mean, I don't blame so much of this season on him because he's been dealt such a crappy hand.
So you would not be on the old fire Rocco bandwagon?
No, not at all. But I mean, it is an interesting year, though, because this team has underperformed with the talent that they've had. Like, they still should be better. But just so many of these situations, I don't really know how he can do it any differently. I mean, it's so easy to point fingers and be like, I can't believe he did this. And yes, I agree with you like saying that, but you have to have another option. It's kind of like the Archer debate. Like, he's not a qualified 5th starter. Okay, who though then? I mean, there has to be, in order for your argument to be something more than just being whiny and complaining, you have to give him another option. And if you don't have, I mean, would you have been happy today, David, if Palacios, he pinch hit with Billy Hamilton, who tried to lay down a bunt and got thrown out by 30 feet? I mean, no, you wouldn't have been. So it's just darned if you do, darned if you don't. So it's a tough situation for him to be in.
All right, well, let's keep cruising, Hogs. Minnesota moment time.
Minnesota moment.
A lot of things to look forward to and a lot of things to look back fondly upon during this series. What are you picking as your moment,
I had so many options and all of them were negative. I wanted to go with giving up like 800 runs in the first inning of all these games, the Twins trying to outdo themselves every game, being like, how far can we get behind and still try to make it somewhat exciting at the end? But I went with Archer and Kepler getting hurt. It's just been the story of the year, and I think Minnesota moment for me is something that sums up the series and it's just those two guys going out again. Another 2 important pieces of this team going on the IL when they can't afford to lose any more guys. It just sums up how this year's gone.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the last out in each game just because they were all such a letdown. The Twins really did everything they could to make it seem like these games were interesting. And they really weren't because they all resulted in losses. But in game 1, Cave ended with a bad at bat. Game 2, Kepler hits it to the left side of the infield. And it would have been a hit if there wasn't a runner on 3rd. Like, it's just like, again, Kepler had such a rough outing in game 2 specifically. And then, as you just mentioned in game 3, the Palacios at bat, it's like, well, I wish it was anybody else, but who else are you going to go to? So my Minnesota moment is the continual letdown. At least it's consistent in my life, I suppose.
Well, and you start thinking, you start allowing yourself to think. I mean, game 1 and game 2, we had the tying and or winning run up at the end of the game, and you start thinking, okay, man, a homer here, and they turn this momentum around, and then it just never happened, and we keep waiting for that moment this year, and I just fear that we're going to be sitting there the first week of October being like, well, that was it. It never hit.
I hope I get to cheer for the Orioles. Anyway, let's go here on to Maurer's Musings.
I just don't know how it can get any better.
Maurer's Musings.
So I'm going to start us off, folks, here because yours is a little bit more philosophical and bigger than baseball, we'll say. My musing, I just wonder, I've been thinking about this a lot. They went into this series against Cleveland with an opportunity to take the lead in the AL Central, and they clearly didn't do that. And this was a rough outing, certainly. But I do wonder, Hogs, would our mindsets be more optimistic if the Twins had been trailing in the AL Central all season? Would we be far more hopeful than we are right now, which is sort of like pit of despair level misery?
Oh, absolutely. Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, we go back to that first podcast that we recorded, and all of us were right around the 500 mark is what we were kind of predicting that the Twins would end up, which, I mean, shocker, that's right where they are right now. And if, I hate doing this, but if you had told me at the beginning of the year that we'd be sitting here on September 11th and they're 4.5 back after being in last place last year, I for sure would have taken it. So if I would have known that they had to claw back in order to get to that point, yeah, I absolutely would have taken it. The hard thing about this year is they shouldn't be 4.5 back. Like,
yeah.
Dan sent a text on our group thread this year. Like, does it seem like all of these losses have just hurt more this year, or is that just me? I mean, recency bias is a thing, but it definitely seems like this year's been worse than every other year. I mean, we keep going back to that 5-game series against the Guardians where they should have swept them. There's been so many opportunities this year where you get one more clutch hit, you get one more batter out, and this team looks entirely different. So, yeah, I think it's been the heartbreak that has made this year, frankly, brutal as a Twins fan.
All of that to say, my goal for this week, Hogs, is to be very optimistic. I'm going to pretend like I didn't know anything about the season until today. And I know there's an off day tomorrow, and then the Royals series starts. And so in my mind, Hogs, this team has a chance where they really shouldn't have any right to, in my blank mind.
Yeah,
so,
and I can't argue with that either, like, because there is still hope. They play the Royals. I mean, you do well against the Royals, and then you get 5 games. You win 4 out of 5 there. We could be back in first in 10 days. I mean, it's not as outlandish as it sounds or when you look at it, but oh man, every time I've counted them out this year, they've come back again. So hopefully they got one more bounce off the mat.
All right, well, what do you have for us, Hogs? I really, really like your question here.
Well, I just don't really want to talk about this series anymore, so I want to look a lot bigger picture. And it got me thinking this weekend with the Badgers losing and the Packers losing and the Twins losing. If I could have any championship that I want, if you could have any championship that you want between the college team you root for, the NBA, the Wild, the Vikings, the Twins, who would you choose? What would be the one championship that you would be the most pumped up about?
This is really tricky, right? And it's tricky because of the podcast, first of all, because I think that clearly the Twins are the team that I follow the closest.
Yes.
And I watch virtually every game unless it's an off episode, and I pay attention. I care a lot. I go to a lot of the games. I enjoy it. There's a lot of family history here. It's just hard because they've won. You know, they've won it before, but they've never won it when I've really been really cognizant of that fact. Now, that being said, I'm guessing that a majority of the podcast listeners here would be screaming, the answer is the Vikings and it's not close. Like, I think that's probably what's in the mind of many of these listeners. To me, this is what I'll say. This is the order. It goes Vikings, Twins, Wild, T-Wolves, Loons, I guess, if we're counting them in this. Or Minnesota United. I really follow that team very closely. I don't even know what the right thing to call them is.
Soccer.
So,
it's just awesome.
In my heart of hearts, though, I would probably say the Twins, but it'd be real hard if you only had the Twins and Vikings on the table for who I was going to pick. I'm probably going to lean Vikings right now, though.
Yeah, see, that's why that's such an interesting question, because my answer is very different just based on who my professional football team rooting interest is. So one thing I want to make clear to the listeners right now is I didn't choose to be a Packer fan. Like, what happens in sports is you get to root for a team either based on blood or geography. Those are the only 2 options. My dad's from Wisconsin. He's a huge Packer fan. That's why I'm a Packer fan. The reason I'm not a Brewer fan is because the Brewers weren't around when he was 10 to 15 years old, when you're kind of getting into baseball. So he kind of rooted for the Cubs, the Twins, and then when the Brewers came in the 70s, he started rooting for them a little bit. So it's a lot less like pushback from my dad. And then he moved to Minnesota for graduate school. So that is why I'm a Packer fan. But I've seen the Packers win twice. I saw them win in 96 and then again in 2010. It was absolutely awesome. And I was born in 89. The Twins won in 91. I was 2 years old. I don't remember that at all. So for me, the answer is real easy. And baseball's always been my first love too. It's by far my favorite sport. So yeah, I'd go Twins number 1, and then I think I'd go Wild number 2, then the Packers, and then the Wolves.
Just as a thought experiment here, if you were a Vikings fan, Would your answer be different, do you think?
I don't know. They've been around so long and have, not to rub it in, Vikings fans, but you've had so many opportunities and just gotten the crap kicked out of you at the least opportune moments. So I feel like if I had to go through Gary Anderson missing the field goal, Brett Favre getting killed, I think I'd have to choose a Vikings Super Bowl. Let me tell you guys, it's awesome too. Winning a Super Bowl is awesome.
Okay, well, that was fun. I very much enjoyed that, Hogs. Well, let's keep. Do we even have to do? Let's do this segment just to do it. Series grades time.
Series grades.
Hogs, I put this one under. It doesn't even deserve a letter. It just deserves heartbreak. How I labeled this.
I don't know what I put an F minus. I mean, you can't go lower than an F, but it was just brutal. Every day, just a new sucked the life out of me.
Okay, well, with that, I don't want to talk anymore about this series. Let's go to something more interesting, Herbie's headlines.
I don't know, Jack. It looked like Herbeck pulled him off the bag.
Herbie's headlines.
Quick updates real quick. Dodgers are the first to clinch a postseason berth in the MLB. I don't know that we care, but it's interesting, I guess. And then the one that we probably do care a little bit about, Pujols has hit his 697th home run. Now he is 4th all-time, passing A-Rod. So that's pretty cool, and honestly, he's got to get to 700 at this point, right?
He has to. Only 3 left with, about 20, 22 games to go. Like, you gotta hope that he gets it. That'd just be so cool for the game of baseball. And I would like to call out and do a correction. I said 600 the last time we were talking about Pujols. I know it's 700. I wish I would have called myself out on it in the episode. I thought I had said it, and then afterwards when I was listening to it the next day, I was like, oh, I did it again.
Okay, so now on, that was like sort of the appetizers, right? So that was the trays were being passed and we munched a little bit, but now it's time, Hogs. We're sitting down. It's main course time. The 2023 rules changes for MLB have come to light, and they are, and let's just say they're significant, Hogs. So we have a pitch clock, 15-second pitch clock with bases empty, 20 seconds with runners on. Then we also have a shift ban, and the shift ban, it's very explicit rules. There needs to be 2 fielders on each side of second, and the feet must be on the dirt. And then the last change, bases are going to increase in size from 15 to 18 inches.
I'm sure Dan is excited about that last one, but I mean, I hate this so much. I cannot express to you how much I hate this. Like, pitch clock, whatever. Like, I love that baseball is the only sport that doesn't have a timer. And if this starts, I mean, I don't care if games are only 2.5 hours long or if they're 3 hours long. I don't care. It shouldn't have a clock. But the one that really gets me going is the shift. Like, this is the stupidest thing Major League Baseball has done in a long time. And Manfred has done some really, really stupid things. So this just sets the cake. But all of sports is about defenses adapting to offenses and then offenses adapting to defenses again. You get to watch that strategy pay off. And we're trying to get away from teams just either striking out or hitting a home run. And now we're going to go back to rewarding that again because guys that are pull hitters, they're not penalized as much when teams can't put the shift on. I can't stand it. It drives me nuts. I think it takes away one of the greatest things about our game. And it should be noted that every single player on the competition committee voted against these rules. So not only do we have something that is bad for the game, the players don't even want it. And this just frustrates me to no end. It's stupid, and I hope it goes away. I hope it's like when they could review pass interference in the NFL, and they did it for 1 year, and everyone's like, that's going to be a bad idea, and then it was a bad idea, and they're like, let's pretend that never happened. So I hope 2023 is just the 1 year that we have to deal with this stupid shift being banned, and then it's going to come back again in 2024. But this is dumb.
Yeah, so I think obviously, like you'd said, the base is increasing in size. I think it's fine. Nobody really cares. The pitch clock, I'm still not convinced it's going to be enforced as much as everybody says it's going to be enforced. Like, once I see it, maybe my opinion will change on that, and maybe they are going to be really strict about it. But I do think there's something to be said. If I go to a Twins game and it's under 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours is about perfect, I'd say, if the game is, like, not close. Right, but you're talking like such a dad right now, David. We both have young kids, so like bedtime is a huge deal, and getting sleep. Like 5 years ago, you wouldn't have cared. Yeah, 3 hours. I don't care. I'll be fine. But now that you have a kid, you're like, oh man, we're not gonna get in bed until 10. It's gonna be bad. It's gonna be real bad. So everybody was talking about how quick Varland worked, and that's part of it because he's come up in the system now where pitch clock is sort of the norm, and so there's an understanding you need to be quicker to home. I don't mind that. I just don't want games to be like, less than 2 hours. It's like, how many beers can you drink in less than 2 hours?
Right.
Is really the big question.
And you read the fine print rules to this too. Like when you first look at it, like how you explained it sounds pretty simple, but there is so many little details where it's like, if it's over 75 degrees outside and there's 7 clouds in the sky and it's the humidity is over 50%, the pitcher gets 1 extra second per inning that he could use. It gets so ridiculous. And yeah, like you're saying too, this one we kind of have to see how it's enforced.
Yeah,
if there's 7 pitches a game where batters are getting extra balls because of this being enforced, I don't want to see that. But I guess, yeah, I'll keep an open mind on this one a little bit. The shift, I won't. My mind is closed.
Yeah, the shift is also one of those things where I am so opposed to this because specifically the logic that you're using for the pitch clock and the logic that you're using for the shift ban are similar in that the shift hasn't been banned. So clearly players that are coming up in systems where the shift isn't banned are going to be taught to avoid the shift if they happen to be pull hitters. Now, the pitch clock, it's the same idea where the pitch clock is being enforced at the lower level leagues. And so clearly pitchers are going to naturally speed up as the game progresses and as they grow in the sport. So one of these things you've decided we're going to implement the same as what we've done in the lower leagues. So that pitch clock is now going to be a big part of Major League Baseball, but that problem should have already corrected itself with the new pitchers coming into the league. The shift ban is the same thing. You haven't enforced it. And so what's happened is all of these players who have put the extra time in are now penalized because the shift is now banned.
Yeah, it makes no sense. And that's what a lot of players came out and said, like, you can't just go from 0 to nothing on the shift like this. Like, you're not even trying anything out. No one even knew that this was happening. And all of a sudden it's next year we're banning it and you can't do it anymore. And all of these guys coming up through the systems in high school ball and college ball and like they're learning how to beat the shift, and now it doesn't even matter anymore. And I think that to me is one of the cooler things about baseball. Like guys like Luis Ariz who can slap the ball to all corners of the field. That's why he's so successful, is because he came up in the shift era and he's been able to beat it. And now you're not going to see that anymore. It's because one guy decided that he didn't know what a shortstop was anymore because of where they're standing. So we're like, well, shoot, we got to make sure that he's got a sign on his head that says shortstop now for the rest of it and can only stand in a 5 foot by 5 foot square. It's just insane.
And I've had some arguments with people about this, and I have yet to hear any solid reason why this is a good idea.
No, the best one is because I don't know what a shortstop is anymore.
Okay, well, with that here, let's go into Puckett's picks for the upcoming Royals series.
And we'll see you tomorrow night.
Puckett's Picks.
So, Hoges, as the listeners, you will get the first pick off the board.
I think this is probably one of the easiest picks I've had all year. I'm sticking with Correa. Why? If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
No, this would be madness if you went with anybody else at this point, I'd say.
Who do you got then, David?
Yeah, so it'll come to me because Miranda scored less than Gordon, so I'm going to take Miranda again because that seems like the right thing to do. And then Dan with the last pick is definitely going off script, and he's going to take Urshela.
I kind of like that pick. He's been a little cold lately, but I think he's a solid pick. And frankly, outside of like Correa, it's a bit of a crapshoot. Like I think Miranda's still a good pick too. But with so many of these other Twins being hurt, you can almost throw a dart on the board, and it's going to be a pretty equal representation now.
Last segment to close this out, Hoges. It's time for Dan's Dumbs.
Just a bit outside. He tried the corner and missed.
Dan's Dumbs.
I feel bad picking on him because you pick on him so much when you're on with him that I feel like he deserves a break. But I just had, when you said, Dan, he's also from another city that one of your favorite Twins is from St. Paul, and Dan goes, Miguel Sano? I mean, I was laughing so hard, and I couldn't figure out if he was joking or not, but I don't think he was. I think that was his legitimate guess, and it was followed up by him earlier in that same episode saying Velo. And Dan and I rip Atterbury all the time for saying this. It's one of the things that I think we do that bugs you the most because you really don't care, but it bugs Dan and I so much that he says it. And I thought it was a bit. I truly thought it was a bit that he said it just to get like you going and get after him. I texted him, ladies and gentlemen, and he said that he said it on accident. So that was real. So I got to give him a dumb for that one.
Well, thanks, Hoges, for filling in. A wonderful way to end the show. I love it when Dan gets the dumbs and not me.
Yeah, unfortunately, other than the Archer stuff, I didn't have much to come after you from this time. It's been fun doing this again this year. I had a blast doing it with the both of you. I appreciate you guys including me, and it's been a blast.
Yeah, I'm hoping we get to have you on the show again, but we'll be talking about the postseason. But I don't know, Hogs. I'm hoping the optimism wins out.
Hey, you said this week we're looking at it that we came back and we're coming. So yeah, we'll do it. We'll get there. They're coming back, I believe.
I will send us out. Well, folks, if you like what you hear, please tell a friend. You can follow us on Twitter at Men for the Win and find our Men for the Win Facebook page. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast to be notified when new episodes are available. And if you could leave us a rating, that'd be great. A reminder that our episodes are now available on our YouTube channel, and if you could drop us a like and subscribe, we'd greatly appreciate it. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, go Twins. That'll wrap up another episode of Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, go Twins.